friends, it's Ren. I know it's been a while. We're not gonna talk about it. We're just gonna get into the video. I don't know how to read anymore, so maybe talking about all the books that I would like to buy / read is going to improve my reading capabilities. So as you can probably tell from the title today, well actually, you know, I'm probably gonna make this a slightly clickbaity title, so maybe you can't tell, but I'm going to be talking about the books that I would buy if I had $1,000 to just blow on books. If a rich person handed me $1,000 and was like, you can only spend this on books, this is what I would buy. I don't know if anyone in the book community has done it yet, but it's kind of stolen from, like, I see beauty gurus doing it with like makeup, which makes more sense because when I tell you I struggled to get me to 1,000. So they had the right idea. This was slightly more difficult, but I did it. So yay for capitalism. Without further ado, let's get into the books. Also, I'm not gonna say the prices because I think that's just kind of boring. Like, I'm not trying to sell these to you unless it's like notable and I'm like, this shit is expensive. For example, my first item is $141.45, and that is the Complete Series of Unfortunate Events series. The Complete Wreck is what it's called, which I love. These books were so important to me in my childhood, and so the fact that I don't have any copies, my father, bless his soul, threw them all away when I moved out of his house and never returned. I guess that's partially kind of my fault. But yeah, he threw them all away, so I do not have my copies, which is really sad because I know I wrote in them and stuff, but the next best thing is to just get the complete set on my shelves. Next, we have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I just really want it. I read it earlier this year and it's definitely something I think that I'll revisit. I just thought it was really compelling and a very honest depiction of mental health issues. I also like this cover in particular. That's also going to be something where I'm like, I like this cover, so that's why I'm buying this book. But I like this cover in particular. Usually I see the one with like the pink text and the blue picture of someone's shoes, I guess. And I'm not as much of a fan of that one. I prefer minimalistic covers, generally speaking. So yeah, this one works for me. Next, we have 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. This one I have not read yet and I really want to. This is a thriller where there's like 8 perfect murders that occurred in literature, one of them being The Secret History, and someone is recreating them / committing them, and this person has to find out who it is. I've heard mixed things about this, but personally, I still really want to read it just because it involves The Secret History, so I feel kind of contractually obligated, if you will. So yeah, that is definitely going to be on this list. Next, I have A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. This cover in particular, I already have a copy of A Movable Feast, but I just don't like the cover. It's this one. I don't know, the lighting is not great, but it's this one, and I'm just not a huge fan of it. I've had this copy for a really long time, so part of me wants to keep it just for nostalgia. I've had it since I was in high school, but you know, I'm willing to toss it in favor of better. Next, I would get this set of covers of Toni Morrison's books. So we have Beloved, Sula, and The Bluest Eye. I have read Beloved and Sula. I read Sula for school and then I read Beloved earlier this year. They were both extremely good. So naturally I want to read The Bluest Eye. And these covers are just so lovely that I can't resist them. They're just beautiful and I love it when an author's books go together cohesively. I feel that way about V.E. Schwab's books too. I just love it when they all like look good together next to each other. Iconic. So I would definitely be getting these editions. Next, I have 2 of Miss Donna Tartt's books, one being The Secret History, a new edition, specifically this edition. I like the one with like the statue on the cover and everything, but I, again, love minimalist cover designs and you can't have enough copies of The Secret History in my humble opinion, so yeah, I mean, whatever. If I have $1,000 to spend, that's what I'm gonna be doing. The next one though is a book by her that I haven't read, the only one of her books that I haven't read, which is The Little Friend. I think it's probably the least talked about one because one of them is The Goldfinch and the other is The Secret History. So yes, it is the least talked about of her books, but I just don't want to read it because I love Donna Tartt and her writing, so what can I say? Next, I want to get Leaves of Grass and The Complete Poems by Walt Whitman. I am just in a Whitman mood lately. I just really am vibing with him on a level that I had not previously. I don't know what it is. I just keep seeing like quotes and stuff from his poetry and it's hitting, you know? Sometimes poets, like, they need a little bit and you get to a perfect spot in your life and then they're just hitting all the time. Whitman is like that for me right now. I don't know why my voice keeps breaking. It's because I'm getting really emotional about Walt Whitman. What else is new? And I'm also getting more into poetry. I'm doing this 30-day challenge where I read a poem every day. Currently I'm reading Sappho, the translation by Anne Carson, so that's going well, but I would love to get some Whitman in there. I probably will. I'll probably get a book from the library, but if I had $1,000, why not just buy it? Next, I have Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I want this cover specifically because I hate that god-awful black and white. You see this girl's knees and then she's holding a flower or something. I think it's atrocious. I don't know why I hate it so much, but I just do, and I get mad every time there isn't like a better cover for Anna Karenina. So I'm getting this one in this fake situation. I actually have not read Anna Karenina, which is crazy because one of my favorite books is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, so the fact that I haven't read this blows my mind. I don't know what I'm doing. Next, I would like this edition of The Great Gatsby. It's just pretty. Moving on. The trash man is here, coming to pick me up. Next, I would want this edition of We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I have been getting into horror lately. I might be doing a video about it sometime soon. The catalyst being horror audio drama podcasts that I've been getting into. It's so stupid. It is, I have 3 brain cells because I get so scared that I can't sleep. Like, I become an insomniac because I engage with this content, and yet here I am putting this on the list. So know that you're watching someone who is just dumb. The heart wants what it wants, and I want blood. Next, I have this edition of A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. I just love this cover. It just hits. I also really, back in my younger and edgier days, I really liked A Clockwork Orange, and I was like the height of cinema. You know, it wasn't a great take, and I don't know what I was doing, but I do really want to read the book. I can't believe I didn't back in the day. I guess that was before I was really reading. Why not if I really like the cover and I have $1,000? Next, we have this edition of Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. I love this book, one of the best classics of all time. I just bought a new edition of this book right here because I just didn't like the old cover that I had, and I really like this one, but this one is my favorite, so yeah, I would get it. Next, I have The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings box set. I really want to read the Lord of the Rings books. I keep meaning to, and it just slips away from me, so having them on my shelves might help that situation, and it's only $39.51 for all, 4 books? I think that's pretty good, so I'm not mad at that at all. Next, I have Crush by Richard Seiken. I read his poetry on Tumblr all the time, and I know that's probably not saying great things, but honestly, this man rips my soul out, and people will just put one line and I'm like, how will I ever recover from a whole book of his poetry? So that's definitely on here. Next, I have a book of poems by Sylvia Plath. Like I said, I read The Bell Jar, and I very much would like to read her poetry as well. I've read some of it, but not very much. I think I've just read like Lady Lazarus. I would like to expand my horizons a bit. Next, we have Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson. I want to read this so bad, and you know whose fault it is? Emma from Emmy. I actually bought her a copy of this book and had it sent to her. Now I just keep thinking about it because she was like losing her mind about it, so I would like my own copy, please and thank you. Yes. The way that they chose to order these, because they did choose, is very confusing to me, so sorry if you're confused. We'll be there together. So next, I have Norton Critical Editions of Macbeth and Paradise Lost. I'm just a nerd. I don't know what to tell you. Like, these are 2 of my favorite works of literature, so having an annotated copy, I just really like the Norton Critical Editions. I don't know what to tell you. Again, yeah, just a nerd, so. Next, I have Ghost of Harvard by Francesca Saratella. This book seems vaguely dark academic. I don't have a great summary. The problem is, so I was on the fence about this one. I still want to read it, but I don't know if I would buy it necessarily. But it is about this girl who is investigating her genius brother's suicide. Apparently he developed paranoid schizophrenia and committed suicide, and then she starts hearing voices. Either this could be good or it could be a disaster, which is partially why I don't want to buy it. But at the same time, if I just have endless amounts of money, why the fuck not? So yeah, that's why it's on there. Next we have more poetry, Dickinson and Byron. I really like Emily Dickinson, the queen of the M dash. I just want to read more poetry. Byron, I'm obsessed with him and his life, so I should really get into his poetry. She Walks in Beauty is Byron, right? I'm pretty sure it is. I'm familiar with that poem, but outside of that, I'm really not like super deep into poetry, and I really want to be, if you couldn't tell from the amount of poetry that is in this. So yeah, I'm trying to get deeper in, and I'll go with Byron and Dickinson. Next we have King and the Dragonflies by The Good Case and Calendar. Oh my god. Case and Calendar wrote Felix Ever After, in case you forgot, in case you've stumbled upon this channel, and that book wrecked my whole career. So I really want to read their other books, this being one. King and the Dragonflies, I'm pretty sure it's about a boy who is coming to terms with the fact that he's gay. The main plot, or the main through plot, is that his brother died and King believes that he was reincarnated as a dragonfly, I think. If I'm incorrect, I apologize, but yeah, regardless, literally, Kaysen could write about like the time a character read a phone book and I would still be like, I'm listening. Next, I have The Queer History of the United States by Michael Bronski. I just want to know. I just want to know the queer history of the United States. No fun reason for that. Next, I have Night Film by Marisha Pessel, I think is what it is pronounced as. This is one of those dark academia books that gets recommended a lot, so that's why I picked it. I actually recently saw Lucy from Crescent Pages read this and be like, not for me, which worried me a little bit, but sometimes we deviate in taste. That like crew of Lucy, Carolyn, and Emma, they tend to like line up really well with me in terms of what I like. Emma has better taste than I do, so, but what the point is, I usually trust their judgment, so it made me a little nervous to see Lucy rate it like that, but I'm gonna give it a try anyway. Moving on, The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum. I don't really know what this book is about. I know that I really wanted to read it when I first read the synopsis. That's enough for me when I'm trying to fill my cart and get to $1,000. And I've heard really, really good things about it. Books and Lala, Kayla, I know she was saying good things about it, but her and my taste, completely different sides. Kayla and I do not agree generally on books, but it's fine. Next we have Foul is Fair by Hannah Capin. I really want to read this. I know it has to do with Shakespeare, which you could probably guess from The Foul is Fair. There's like a vigilante girl murdering boys. We stand that, and I know that this is one of the books that Heather goes the hardest for, and usually when Heather goes hard for books and is like recommending them actively, generally, not always, but generally, they do end up in my good books, as it were. So I'm willing to trust her on this one, and also the cover is beautiful. Next we have Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. I really want to read more Joan Didion. Why did I say more? I've never read a single Joan Didion. I want to read Joan Didion, period. I just hear great things about her work, and I also read great quotes from her work, so I'm like, what is taking me so long to read this? So Year of Magical Thinking is on there. Slouching Toward Bethlehem is also on there tentatively, but I hit my capacity for books, so. Next we have this edition of War and Peace by Sir Leo Tolstoy. I have War and Peace already. I have the Barnes & Noble edition. I'm not a huge fan of the translation of it, so I would much prefer this copy, which I do, in my opinion, think has a better translation. That's all. Again, with me being a fucking nerd. Next we have Milk of Paradise by Lucy Inglis. If you don't know, which you probably don't unless you are a very good fan of mine, one of my historical obsessions, of which I have many, is the Opium Wars. I just find that period of history very interesting. And this is kind of about that. I think it's primarily about that. I don't know if it goes in modern day or if it just covers that area, but I'm interested, and so I'll read it. Next, I have Mythos by Stephen Fry. This is a book of, I believe it's just Greek and Roman mythology. I'm not entirely sure, but the book is beautiful. I see it at Barnes & Noble and at my local indie bookstore all the time, and it's just so pretty, but it's so expensive. It's $30 on here. I know that might not sound so expensive to some people, but to me, I hate spending anything over like 20 bucks on a book. But if I had the resources, then for sure I would buy it. Next, I have this beautiful edition of Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. I am doing this thing where I'm trying to not buy multiple editions of books, but because I love Good Omens so much, I'm like, maybe I can just get this pretty cover, you know, and I like it and I can just have it on my shelf. Speaking of which, I also want to get the illustrated Good Omens. This book is $50. It's actually $47.44 if you want to be specific, but it is just too much for me to ever get as a normal human being on this earth, even though I love Good Omens. So yeah, I mean, to have 3 copies of Good Omens on my shelves feels like a lot. Plus I have the script book for the show, so it's like, what are you doing? Who cares if I have free money? So that's what I'm going with for this. Next, I have this beautiful edition of The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I really want to read this book. I actually got it from my library and I started reading it because I'm in a reading slump. I didn't finish it. I just read the first chapter, but I loved the first chapter, so I want to continue reading it. And why not continue reading it in an edition that is this pretty? Next, I have An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Sir Hank Green. I really enjoyed this book. I have it on Kindle, and I have the audiobook, but I would really like to have a physical copy on my shelves, especially because I have a physical copy of A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. I really want to have a complete set. I actually put this on my Christmas list just 2 days ago, so I'm committed to actually wanting it. I feel like I'm talking very fast and a lot in this video. I think I just miss being on BookTube. Anyway, next I have The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. This is the second Hemingway on this, and here's the secret for you. I don't like Hemingway that much. There were few books that I hated more reading when I was in high school than Old Man and the Sea. To be fair, Man vs. Nature is literally my least favorite like form of conflict, so that was part of it, but I just could not stand it. But I've grown a lot. Maybe I'll like Ernest Hemingway. Who's to say? Next, I have The Shining by Stephen King. Again, getting into horror, and I want to read some of the classics, so Shirley Jackson, Stephen King, that feels classic to me. I'm pretty sure that this is Kat from Paperback Dreams, her favorite Stephen King, and I trust her because the reasons that she doesn't like Stephen King are the reasons that I don't like Stephen King. Next, I have American Messiahs by Adam Morris. This is another nonfiction book. This is about like cult leaders using religion in America, or just religious figures. I don't want to say that because I believe Joseph Smith is in that, so I'm not saying that Mormonism is a cult. I don't want to do that. I think it's about religion in America and the leaders who led it. Sounds interesting to me. Next, I have For the Most Beautiful by Emily Hauser. This is a retelling of the Iliad with a female perspective, I believe. I don't know whose perspective it's from, but as soon as I hear, oh, retelling of the Iliad, I'm there. Next, we have this beautiful edition of War and Peace. It is the Vintage Classic Russian Series edition, and it is stunning. I am a person, if I'm gonna have more than one copy of a book, it's usually gonna be a classic, and this is the reason. Have a edition that I can write in, and then to have an edition that just looks pretty. That would functionally be the reasons for both of the editions that I have mentioned on this list. Next, I have The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry. I should have looked up these names before I got in here. Everyone's familiar with it. This edition specifically is absolutely stunning. I think it's just gorgeous. I have never actually read this book, but I would really like to, so it's on this list. And finally, we have The Late Lord Byron by Doris Langley Moore. So this is a biography about, you guessed it, the late Lord Byron. He just is so interesting to me. Like, all the shit, I've mentioned him multiple times on this channel, but the shit that he pulled, there's no match. There's just no match. So I can't believe that I don't have a biography of his yet, which is why this one's on the list. Yeah, he's just wild. If you want to do any research into one historical writer, it should be Byron. Unparalleled. So that is it, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me. This was so fun, even if it was so, like, strenuous to put together, to be honest. Like, it was really hard to get my cart up to 1,000, but I managed. Some people I'm sure would have a better time than me. I'm just not a big, like, special edition person, especially not anymore. I recently, like, sold all my special editions because I'm like, what is this doing for me? Unless it's like a book that I really, really love, there's no reason. So please let me know what would be on your list if you had $1,000 to spend just willy-nilly, especially if it's something like ridiculously expensive, like if it's some, like, a first edition of The Great Gatsby, which, now that I'm thinking of it, just let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I missed you guys so much. I'm hoping to get back to semi-regularity, but again, my phone is broken and I film on my phone, so it makes it difficult. Bye!
My eyes, they drift as she walks by. Can't tell why this feels right. I've